The volume of data coming into federal agencies makes it increasingly critical for IT leaders to develop modern and agile data strategies. But greater still is the desire for many agencies to harness that data using newer artificial intelligence and machine learning tools to better inform their mission. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and joining us to talk about how unifying data can help agencies better harness AI is Kurt Steege, Chief Technology Officer at ThunderCat Technology. Kurt, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Wyatt.
So we are several years into the implementation of the federal data strategy. I'm curious, how are you seeing agencies make critical progress on actually unifying their data so far?
Thanks for the question, Wyatt. I think it's very interesting. And one point that I like to make up front is really, I think information, its safety and its sharing is a key product of the government. I think with everything else that's going on, I think information is sort of at the forefront of everything that is provided to the general public. It's the fabric of what we do from a day-to-day basis, from you take the information from the field, either sensors or people, the analysts that are putting that information together, and then the professional staff that are enablers and facilitators of those two components. It's been being implemented, not only the information itself, but then the AI around that information in a couple of interesting novel ways throughout the federal government. One of the areas that I've had this conversation with a couple of times over the last years is within the VA. And in the service to our veterans. You think about AI and you think about all these things and information, and you start to think on the science scale, whether it's cutting edge healthcare discoveries. What's been interesting at the VA is they've taken that information around the discoveries and around the trials that are related to those discoveries and mapped that against their patient database to find the right veterans that would be useful and available for those trials, that thereby kind of accelerating sort of the fact that you can get these folks the information that they need and the trials that would be related to them, accelerating the healthcare for the veterans. Other areas that you're seeing it are within Department of Defense and Department of Energy, where they're taking things like parts from planes or ships or machinery and understanding the usage of those things and the physics around where they are, and then predicting failure prior to it happening. This also kind of can get reflected back into the supply chain to say, okay, here's the information. I know this is going to happen in even a month, so that you can start to pull that information and have the parts available just in time when they're needed.
You touched on a really interesting concept around the idea of a data fabric. Talk to me a little bit about that. And can you describe some of the challenges that your customers are trying to overcome to access data across their enterprise infrastructure?
Sure. I mean, a data fabric is really, I guess the best way to describe that, it's hard as an integrated data architecture, that's adaptable, it's flexible, and is available to folks. What's one of the areas that we've really seen this move to the forefront, and actually even referred to as helping to create the data fabric is with the team down at AFTAC, the Air Force Technical Applications Center. They have a really unique and interesting mission around monitoring nuclear treaties across the entire globe. They maintain a global geophysical sensor network on air, land, and sea in order to process seismic and atmospheric data in real time, operationalize this analysis, and then look for patterns and deviations from the norm in near real time. As you can imagine, the Earth is constantly changing. We hear about it all the time. And the more information we have, AFTAC has been doing this since the 50s, and the more we can understand which patterns are natural and which may be violations, and understanding that, reflecting the two things across each other. One of the big pushes from organizations like AFTAC is to create a data fabric so that different sensor information collected in different ways can be viewed with consistency, no silos, and correlated through HPC and AI techniques to get a clearer picture, again, of what is the norm and where this might not be. Is this a natural phenomenon that's occurring, or is this something that we need to be aware of? If you take a look at just even the same information, you can see how other agencies like NOAA might also find it helpful. They've been doing things like creating hyper accurate and instead of calling a forecast, a nowcast, to alert folks and create when flooding conditions could endanger people and towns.
Next, let me ask, how can agencies build resiliency into their data strategies and really prepare for any future changes to data requirements or needs?
But I think there's a couple of pieces right there that are important. And when we start to talk about, when I start to talk about data with a lot of our different clients, is I kind of approach it in a few different in kind of a 6-step way of looking at things. First is data visibility. Understand the data that you have, account for it, understand what data is important, understand where it is. Most folks, most agencies don't realize how much they have sometimes because it can be in many different areas. The next piece that I tend to look at and tend to talk to folks about is, data stewardship, understanding, what a data management framework looks like, where all that info, once you understand where all the pieces and parts are, then you have to start to say, okay, now how do I integrate these things together? The most important thing next is the why. You always hear that, what's your why? How does that, why is this data important? What is the business value of this data? And how does it relate to and correlate to the other things and to my mission? Is it important? Is it not? The next piece, once you have all of those things and you understand these things, is eliminate those, as we talked about before, eliminating those data silos, making sure that we can have a common framework, which mentioned earlier, and then kind of, integrate the things together. You can use things, different types of tools in order to do that integration. And the last two kind of things are prepare for the future. And I think we'll talk a little bit about this as well, is understand what types of things are coming. Flexibility is really key here, not only from a regulatory standpoint, but from a technology standpoint. From a regulation side, just look at the things that have happened in the last few years. Regardless of what else has happened in the last 3 years, there's been AI initiatives released from the current administration and the last administration. Every year there's been a new piece to that, right? Recently, just in the last couple of months, there was the executive order on cybersecurity. That executive order on cybersecurity deals a ton with logging and being able to correlate that information in order to find cyber breaches, and that necessitates having a coherent data strategy. And then, you talk about not just the regulations that are coming down, but new technology. I was just at, in the last 3 weeks, I've been to, one was virtual, but the AI conference through NVIDIA for GTC. And then 2 weeks ago, I was at supercomputing, and the abilities, these latest pieces of technology, new hardware processing, new accelerators. It's becoming this snowball effect. And, we're getting close to, the Christmas season. So you kind of hear this, data begets more data, and then new insights can be reflected back on, on the historical data in near real time. You can just keeps generating more and more. And then I guess kind of the last little thing, if I want to talk about a step, is that shift, that changing of the culture to understand what data is, how we can utilize that as an agency, as a group.
I can certainly appreciate that. And then lastly, Kurt, how does choosing the right partner speed up the time to value for agencies and, that are looking to improve mission services with data-led decisions?
Sure. I mean, I think it's important to understand, the depth and breadth of what tools are out there from latest technologies and how folks can take advantage of the tool sets that are out there. But I think one of the things that makes ThunderCat really unique as a partner is that we look across the architectures, we look across the agencies that we work with. We have cleared and experienced sales and engineering staff with deep insights into multiple agencies, which give us this broad understanding of challenges and strategies being tackled across the entirety of the client base. In some cases, I talk with folks that things like supercomputing and bring new technology, to meet the needs and meet the mission of our federal partners. And in other because we have folks that have been experienced and are cleared to have the right discussions, we have done many occasions kind of brought that agency to agency conversation because of those insights. Is like, we can say, hey, we know that, like I mentioned before, AFTAC and NOAA, we have relationships with both of them. I could say, hey, these guys are looking at something interesting. Maybe you need to talk to these guys, set up the meeting, and then, kind of walk away to make sure that folks are doing the right thing.
Well, Kurt Steege, thank you so much for joining us today to share your insights and observations and talk about how the unified data fabric can help agencies enable AI.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.